badgers. One of the most beautiful and fascinating and most loved of the UK's mammals. And over the years, we've been lucky enough to have filmed many on SpringWatch, displaying plenty of interesting behaviours, perhaps most notably anal rubbing. But tonight we break the bank. And with a little help from our friends, we're going to show you something super special. Hold tight. It's SpringWatch. Hello! I was lagging a bit there, actually.
You were.
Hello, and welcome to SpringWatch 2022. It's our second week coming to you live from Wildcairn Hill on the northwest coast of Norfolk. Now, we got off to a great start last week, but as I intimated there, we've got some cracking badger footage tonight. I can guarantee that you will have never seen anything like this before. And what's more, Jack Smith, a PhD student from Cambridge University, has sent us some extraordinary images of beetles feeding. You're going to want to see that. Really, really special.
Oh, it goes from gorgeous to, I don't know, maybe a little bit gory, but all good, all good.
Gory, I don't think. Our mission, of course, is to bring you the very best of British wildlife throughout the course of our 3 weeks, and also this time a bit of well-being. We know that being out in green spaces and connecting to wildlife improves our mental health, gives us a bit of respite and solace in the troubled times in which we live. And on that account, why don't we take a look at what our long lens cameraman is looking at down on the marsh. So he's about 1 kilometre away from Michaela and I at the moment, on the wet area close to the coast. He's got an avocet there.
It's a speedy avocet.
Very speedy avocet. The Audrey Hepburn of wading birds.
Oh,
disappeared into the grass, but look at what he saw. Oh no, it's back.
There we go.
There it is. Yeah. So elegant. So, magnificently dressed, the avocet. Moments ago, we watched this. 2 young avocets, relatively freshly hatched, seeking refuge in the breast of their mother, in the bosom of their mother. Look at that. You can just see their backside sticking out. And she is so patiently standing there, sheltering them from any potential storm. And let's be honest with you, over the course of the weekend, we've had a few little bits of stormy weather, haven't we?
Oh, it was so wet here in Norfolk. I went out on Saturday morning on the beach thinking I'd have a lovely time in the sunshine. Downpour, I got soaked through to the bone. No, it was terrible weather this weekend.
Not only you, though, not only you. We've been keeping an eye on all of our birds, and they've been drenched too. Now, I shouldn't really anthropomorphise, but is this the most miserable marsh harrier on planet Earth?
It's a broken umbrella,
A broken umbrella, indeed. Sedge warbler diligently using its wings, look, spreading them as wide as it can. The buzzard, runner-up in the most miserable buzzard of the year awards last year, doing its best but failing to keep the young dry. They're absolutely drenched as well underneath there. The heron, well, has a little peep and then thinks, nope, I'll wait for the rain to stop. And of course, these young birds haven't yet got their adult feathers, complete with all those oils to keep them dry. Water birds, well, a bit easier for them. The shell ducklings there, the avocet and the spoonbills, they are very well protected against the rain. Spoonbills continuing to swipe their spatulate bills through the water in search of prey. Another way to hear the avocet, like water off an avocet's back, keeping its young or eggs dry. And look, a little caterpillar in the tip of the bill there. It's picked it up, but frankly, it's just so fed up that it can't be bothered to swallow it.
I really feel sorry for these birds. I mean, can you imagine, you've spent all that energy and your chicks have hatched and you've got to keep them warm in this wet weather. I think we've established that it was wet this weekend, but it's not only wet, it's been cold as well. I feel as if we've fast-forwarded through summer and gone into autumn watch. It's been so...
T-shirt,
look at us.
T-shirt, thermals, fleece jacket.
But we know it's spring because we've still got birds on the nest. We've got plenty of them. Let's catch up with some of them because a lot's happened over the weekend, as you would imagine. We've got a fantastic variety, but I'm going to take you first to the oyster catcher. Let's have a look at them live. Here we go, this is our oyster catcher. Oh, it's hiding a bit of a secret. It's on its nest, but there's been a little bit of action on our oyster catcher over the weekend.
What a filthy bill.
It has, hasn't it? It's been digging. So this is what's been going on. Both of you, look, listen to the noise. It's calling the adult over because both have been taking their turns on that nest. And you can see it's got a ring. And we looked at that ring and we managed to read it as FP74391. It was ringed in Snettisham on the 18th of February 2007. And it's estimated that it was at least 3 years old then, which would make it at least 18 years old now. Now, the average age, apparently, of oyster catchers is about 12 years, but they have had records of one 40 years old.
40?
Yeah.
Amazing,
Pretty
isn't it?
good, isn't it?
As old as a toad.
As old as a toad, exactly. But 18 years, you'd expect it to be pretty experienced. But was it experienced enough? Well, just take a look at the action that happened. So this was Sunday morning in the early hours, the wee small hours of 4:02. There's movement under that adult, fidgeting away. Usually that means that hatching is about to happen. And indeed it was, because as the adult stands up, it removes the egg and the chick has hatched. Very shortly after, though, it's spooked by something. It jumps off the nest. I mean, why would it do that? There's an awful lot of noise going on, an awful lot of flapping. A predator comes in, and if we pull back, we can see that it's a little owl. The adult's still there, it's still making a racket, but interestingly enough, doesn't go anywhere near the nest. The owl just stands there looking at the nest. We thought that it was going to predate the little chick right there and then, but it still hangs around. It's completely brazen. And eventually, it gets it in its talons, and it's clearly going to take that little chick off to a nest. And sadly, that little chick only lasted 8 minutes in this world. All that effort, Chris, to breed, to lay the egg, to incubate it, to hatch, and it lasted 8 minutes. But what I find extraordinary about this is the little owl is much smaller than the oyster catcher. Why didn't the oyster catcher
I don't know.
go and attack it?
Little owl's 190 grams. Oyster catchers on average 580 grams. They're a much bigger, more powerful bird, armed with that very stout bill. You would think they would put up a more robust defence of their young, particularly at that stage where they've invested so much and they've just hatched. If ever there was a time to fight off a little owl, that was the moment.
And especially if that was the adult that was 18 years old, you'd think it'd be experienced enough to know to do that. But it's not all bad news, because you probably saw there was one egg left. So let's see if that egg did manage to hatch. Well, this was this morning, 6:32 this morning. Fortunately, both adults are around, which is obviously better protection. It jumps up, and there's the little chick. Dried off, so it must have hatched a little bit before that. It's raining, it was raining in the morning, so it's really important to keep that chick warm. And that's exactly what the adult is doing. As soon as the rain stopped, the chick came out, had a little look around. Interesting enough, though, it was only this brave when the adult was around, and I'm sure that adult didn't go very far away from the chick because it was going to watch out for that little owl coming back. Fortunately, it didn't, and we've got ourselves a little very cute oyster catcher chick.
Those oyster catchers on the other side of the farm, nesting in an open field, as you saw. Last week we were looking at another species, pretty close to them, again in an open field. It was our lapwings. Let's go live to the lapwing nest now and see what's there. Well, there's nothing there. So what's the story of this nest? Well, if you were watching last week, you'll know that 3 of the 4 eggs had hatched by Thursday. Here we are, the adult flying off with the shell. But look, here, the 4th egg has just hatched. That's a wet youngster hidden behind the fluffy one in the foreground. And they've moved away from the nest, as these precocial birds do. There's all 4 of them, if you look really carefully. As soon as they stop moving, their camouflage kicks in and they're quite difficult to spot. And you can see them there tentatively picking at things. They learn to feed themselves by initially trying pebbles and bits of leaf, and eventually they find an insect. But look, there they are. All 4 of them are still going. If the adult spots an aerial predator, like a little owl, like a buzzard, like the marsh harriers, which are constantly quartering across those fields, they produce a particular call, and all of those youngsters will drop into the soil, hiding all of that white down, and just that brown mottled surface is left exposed, and they sit absolutely stock still, and they are very, very difficult to spot, even if you're a keen-sighted harrier. So fingers crossed, we'll keep our eyes on them, and they might still be out there tomorrow.
Yeah, to me, they just all look so vulnerable, don't they? I mean, they're so tiny and they are out in the open. Right, on Friday, well, Megan left Kielder. She fledged, basically. She spread her wings and she flew east. Megan, where have you landed?
Yes, I have branched off from Kielder and I have gone halfway on my migration, and I'm here in Hawksley Nature Reserve on the coast of Northumberland. I'm always happiest when I'm by the sea, so I can't wait to explore this wonderful habitat alongside you. And this is a place which really has people at the heart of it, and it didn't always look like this. It's a wildlife trust site, and it was transformed in 1983, and this is what it looked like. Radcliffe open cast coal mine. Look at this, it's bleak, no biodiversity there. You've got all the trucks getting the coal out, the cranes, nothing living here. And look what it is now. It's a mosaic of beautiful habitats, home to so much wonderful wildlife. From grasslands to the beautiful lake you can see, to mud flats, reed beds, and of course the coastline as well. It is a really special place, 52 acres. Look at that, brown hares enjoying the sunshine. Roe deer, big ears, obviously keeping out, listening out for any potential threats, but quite relaxed, having a bit of a graze. How beautiful. And then the iconic red squirrel, which is doing really well here in parts of the northeast, and especially here at Hawksley. And hopefully later on this week, we will take a look at those red squirrels in a little bit more detail. But of course, it's not all about the mammals, it's also about the bird life here too, because it's internationally regarded and home to 160 different species. And we actually have a live camera. Look at that. There we go, we've got some grey lag goose there. Absolutely beautiful. Iconic, of course, because of that orange bill, but they're not doing very much, and we have seen a lot of action here already. So let's take a look at some of the species that we have already seen. Beautiful grey heron, using precise precision to capture its prey. Resident all year round. You can see them in shallow waters. Look at that, shaking its head. And a shag. I do love a shag. They can go down to 45 metres. Taking the plunge there, I hope it's a success for it. So peaceful. And a shelduck. That beautiful green head and that chestnut brown necklace. And its ducklings, look how sweet are they? Look toasty and warm, shaking off the water. How adorable. Beautiful lapwing, that iridescence on the wing and that crest there as well. And then terns. There's 4 different species of tern that live here in Hawksley. You've got the common, roseate, then you've got the sandwich and the arctic as well. So we'll be looking at all of those terns a little bit later on as well. Now off in this direction, we've got Coquet Island, a beautiful seabird sanctuary, and there's a live camera there at the moment, giving us an insight into a species, and we're waiting for an egg to hatch. It's a puffin egg, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster. Here is the beautiful Coquet Island, and here is the pair. Listen to this. Bit of beak rubbing, that pair bonding there, and this egg was actually laid 43 days ago. And on average, it normally takes about 40 days for that egg to hatch. So this chick's a little bit late to the party, but hopefully it will still hatch and we'll be able to catch up on that situation later on. But of course, it's not only me here down in the northeast. Yolo Williams is up in Mull, or at least I think he is.
Yes, I am indeed, Megs, I am indeed. I've had a busy weekend. I thought I'd take my boat down to Cardiff and then watch the Wales team play. But now, just like the Welsh team, I'm back stronger. And actually, when you're on a boat like this, you can often get much closer to wildlife than when you're on dry land. And over the weekend, I went out with a boat operator who's been feeding white-tailed eagles from the back of his boat for over 10 years now. Here we go. We've got an eagle. We've got an eagle perched up on a rock over there, almost as if it's waiting for us to come out. It may well be. Looks as if it's just there thinking, come on, where's my food? Such regal looking birds, just sat there on a pile of rocks, you know, and the sun is shining off the bird. You can tell it's an old bird because the head gets paler and paler as they get older. Very impressive looking bird as well. Huge thing. Here we go, the engine's slowing down. It's odd, you know, I've been on this boat before, but every time I get really excited at this point because you know that we're going to put a fish over the back and hopefully the eagle's going to come down and just pluck that fish off the water now. Fish has just gone in, just what, maybe 30 metres off the back of the boat here, and the eagle is looking a lot more alert, looking like it's preparing to launch itself off the rock there, but it hasn't come off straight away. Oh, here we go, here we go. Keep my voice down now. Coming straight towards us. Oh, wow. That is a seriously impressive bird. Probably be an eclipse of the sun in a minute. That's the size of it. Oh, there's a second bird. There's a second bird. Okay, one bird's come round. There's a second bird coming in. Here we go. Which one's going to get it? Look at this. Look, 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 look. Undercarriage out. Look at this. Oh, wow. See that through at once? Oh, fantastic. Oh, brilliant. Just came down. The talons came down almost like an aeroplane's undercarriage and then just plucked that fish out of the water. Straight back up they go. So it's obviously, you know, you can tell the difference in size. Well, the female here and the male over the female is much, much bigger than the male. You can see the blonde head, you can see the white tail, I can even see the yellow talons hanging down as well. Look, look, right overhead, look, here she comes, look at that, look at that. I was so close, I could hear the wing beats then. Oh, amazing. Do you know what this is? It's got to be up there with the best wildlife spectacles anywhere in the UK. Just stand in the back of the boat, and what was that, 20 metres away? White-tailed eagle, a female white-tailed eagle comes down and plucks the fish out of the water. Just an amazing thing to see. And I've seen people come on this boat with no interest in wildlife whatsoever. They've seen that, they've gone, wow! And they left the boat committed conservationists. Wow, how about that? Within 20 metres of Europe's biggest eagle. It was a fantastic experience. Actually, over the years, I have had people come up to me and say, surely that's artificial, you shouldn't be doing that, it's not normal. Well, actually, do you know what? It is normal. You go back 1,000 years, there were fishermen around the coast here, they'd throw some of the catch back in, and the white-tailed eagles were around scavenging. Don't forget, they're also kleptoparasites in that they'll steal food from animals like otters, and they need, what, 500-600 grams of food every single day? And they're not dependent on the fish. Sometimes the boat can't go out because of bad weather for 2-3 days, sometimes a week or more. It's a bit like, you know, when the ice cream van comes around and you fancy an ice cream and it's a real treat. You don't live off the ice cream, it's just something special once in a while, and it's exactly the same for those eagles. And if you do come up to Mull and you have the opportunity, do go out on that boat, because I tell you what, it is fantastic. Now then, Scotland is home not just to Europe's biggest eagle, but also to the Caledonian pine forest. And if you're ever lucky enough to venture into one of those woods, every now and again you'll see a much older, a much more noble pine tree. And those are the granny pines. And some of them are so old that they can no longer produce seeds, but they are absolutely teeming with wildlife.
twisted, gnarled, shaped by the years. A mighty granny pine spreads her arms wide. Whilst she's been standing, the centuries have come and gone. The trials and tribulations of man, no more than passing clouds. This ancient individual is amongst the largest of living organisms in the entire Caledonian forest, and yet she sustains the lives of many of the smallest. Beneath the tree, on the forest floor, a colony of wood ants are getting to work. This thatched mound has been intricately constructed using the granny pine's needles, and it's time to fix up the roof. Gathering the fallen bounty beneath the tree, the ants place each pine needle precisely, making sure the thatch is watertight and the brood inside warm and dry. It's hungry work. Time for a snack. High on the trunk of the granny pine, sticky liquid oozes from under the bark. Pine sap. It's a magnet for famished wood ants. The syrup is a perfect pick-me-up, but it provides more than just a sugar rush. It has microbial properties that can keep the nest clean. So the workers haul chunks of dried resin back to their colony. But these foraging trips can be treacherous. Danger lurks in the dark ravines of the tree's twisted old bark. A gallows spider. Living in ancient granny pines and looking remarkably like a wood ant itself, it can hide in plain sight. It gets to work, spinning a fine tangle of silk threads across the cracks in the bark. A hapless ant stumbles right into its trap. When it's firmly ensnared, the spider maneuvers to the base of the antennae, where it knows the ants have a small weakness in their armour, and injects it with venom, before consuming the contents of the ant's head and body, leaving the rest hung out to dry. But the gallows spider also needs to watch its back. It's just the tempting treat for a crested tit. These restless little birds are found in ancient forests and spend spring and summer flitting around, feasting on the wealth of invertebrates that live in the bark. Their presence here adding to the comings and goings on the old granny pine. A tree that stood the test of time and is brimming with a beautiful and bountiful diversity of life. The granny pines supporting such an enormous diversity of life, and those crested tits, you can only see them in those granny pines. In the UK we have a subspecies. You can find other crested tits all the way down through Europe, France, as far south as Spain. But if you want to see them in the UK, you've got to go there. There are only 12 authenticated records of crested tit in England, the last one in 1954. Head to the granny pines to see that great wealth of life. When it comes to a wealth of life, we also need to consider death. So I want to introduce you to the necrobiome. Necro, death, biome, a community of life. We've already heard from Yolo about those seagulls scavenging dead animals. Here we've seen our kites scavenging roadkill and our buzzards too. So those dead animals in an ecosystem are very valuable. But it's not all about birds eating them. It's about inverts too. So I'd like to introduce you to a very, very sexy group of beetles. The sexton beetles, or the burying beetles. Now they're very brightly coloured. There are about 21 species in the UK and we find 4 of them here in Norfolk. Here are the ones that we find here. You wouldn't mistake them if you saw them. That bright orange elytra, which is truncated, you can just see the tips of their abdomen pointing out. And the one black one, the undertaker beetle, or the black sexton beetle, is the largest of them all. How do they get their name? Well, when an animal dies, it starts to decompose and produces an odour which these extremely sensitive beetles can detect from up to a mile away. They've got lamellate antennae, very, very sensitive. And they then seek out that corpse and start to do their work. Now, these extraordinary images were filmed by Jack Smith, PhD student at Cambridge. And here you see the beetles have arrived at a wood mouse. They're checking it out before they start to bury it. And they can bury things which are up to 200 times their size. Sometimes they strip off the fur and the feathers, but look at this. Very rapidly, the corpse disappears beneath the soil. Why is that? Well, it doesn't want it scavenged by a buzzard or a kite, or it doesn't want the larvae of other beetles to eat it, because they lay their eggs in the surrounding soil, the eggs hatch, and then the larvae migrate to the corpse where they begin to feed on the decomposing meat. What about that? What a story. But it's not the end of the story, because these beetles are very special. They exhibit parental care, and what you're witnessing here is an adult beetle, primarily the females, sometimes the males, regurgitating food to the begging larvae. Look at them, nibbling her antennae, nibbling her mandibles, and she is regurgitating that food. Now, another study done recently has shown that if one of the larvae gets a bit overzealous and starts to annoy the adult, it's doing too much begging, she will punish it by eating it. She'll take it out of the equation. And this is a means of making sure that all of the larvae only stimulate her to regurgitate when they are truly hungry. It's remarkable stuff, parental care in a beetle like that. And as a consequence of that, these types of beetles manage to get many more of their larvae out there as adults in that necrobiome than other types of beetle can. They're quite difficult to see. They're normally active in the evening or at night, but if you do happen to come across one, the National Museum of Scotland would love to hear about it. They've got a Sylphidae project running. Sylphidae are the carrion beetles, not just these beetles, another range of beetles too. But if you spot one, then do get in touch with them. They'd love to know the whereabouts, because guess what? I'm sorry to say, folks, that they are declining, just like so many other species out in our countryside. The details of that project, Citizen Science Project, are on our website. Fantastic stuff. I loved those beetles when I was a kid, and when I first found them one afternoon while cycling along Allington Lane, I nearly burst with excitement. Took them home and they did all that business on top of the TV in a fish tank. Fantastic stuff. But now, let's head north to Megan, who's up on the northeast coast, and see if she can top sexton beetles for sexy species.
I don't know about that. I mean, it's a pretty cool story, isn't it? I mean, I love that fascinating biology that always surprises us. It really does never, ever fail. But when it comes to conservation, of course, there are lots of challenges it faces, and one of the biggest one is habitat fragmentation. There's islands of fantastic, great habitat dotted around, but it's not connected, meaning that wildlife can't disperse to find resources or other mates. But here in Hawksley, the Wildlife Trust, there are many reserves dotted along the coast that are linked up and are providing that form of dispersal. And here I have a map. Here I am. This is where I'm based, in Hawksley. Then we've got East Cheverton down here and Druridge Pools down here. And all of this provides really important habitat, not least because of the proximity to one another, but also to the proximity of the sea, meaning it's incredibly important for migratory birds. But earlier on, I made a trip to East Cheverton, which has really important reed beds. In fact, it has more reed beds than anywhere else in Northumberland. And whilst reed beds are dominated by one plant species, typically common reed, it's home to a myriad of biodiversity. So I went to meet Ian Fisher, who's been volunteering as a bird ringer for the last 17 years. Here we go.
So I have one bird, nice reed warbler. We've got a brilliant orange gape.
They're quite plain, quite simple, but actually just really quite stunning.
They are.
Ian has set 3 nets in the reed beds, and he checks them regularly to make sure no birds are there for long.
Oh, let's see what we've got in this net now. Oh, we've got 3 birds. Excellent.
Look at that.
And that looks like a Chetty's warbler.
It does,
This
doesn't
bird.
it?
Brilliant.
That's very exciting. Gorgeous.
Out of the warblers here, the Chetty's is the hardest to see, blending into the vegetation they live in.
Oh, wow. Beautiful colours.
These are a lovely rich chestnut. Really small, a lot smaller than the reed warblers. Yeah, quite unique because they only have 10 tail feathers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, most birds have 12.
Yeah.
The Chetty's only have 10. And put her in a bag.
Look at that,
So-
getting quite a collection.
The final net gives us our 3rd warbler species.
So the last one's a sedge warbler.
Ian's dataset stretches back 40 years. But this is only Ian's 8th Chetty.
Yeah, it's quite amazing to see a Chetty's actually.
No, they are the masters of disguise, or skulk.
Right, so who have we got in this one?
Reed warbler.
Oh, beautiful.
And we should be able to look up when that was ringed. So that ring number was S471105. So it's now when it was caught in 2017.
2017.
So that bird is probably 6 years old.
How are the reed warblers doing across Northumberland?
They're doing actually quite good. This is ring number 99. When I first started ringing here, sedge warblers outnumbered reed warblers by about 3 or 4 to 1.
Okay.
And over the last 3 or 4 years, reed warblers have actually outscored sedge. Yeah, this is sedge warbler. As you can see, they are a little bit different from the reed warblers.
So different, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah,
all the details.
A lot of streaks, and they have a nice creamy white eyebrow.
Beautiful. When they're flying, they are small brown birds, but when you get up close in that detail.
Yeah, you can usually see the white eyebrow on the sedge warbler. As I say, they normally have that nice chestnut rump, which adult reed warblers have to a little degree.
Yeah.
You can see it's just a little bit warmer from that part of the back down. They've got nice dark streaks on the back of the sedge warbler. The reed warbler's very plain.
It's a great opportunity to get that up close look, which you rarely get.
You don't realise how beautiful some birds are until you do see them this close. So shall we let them go?
Yeah, let's do that. Right, ready?
2, go.
Historically, reed warblers were only found in one location across Northumberland, but now they're being found a lot more widely across the area. And we wouldn't know this without the dedication and selflessness of volunteers just like Ian. They are often the unsung heroes of conservation, tracking those trends so we can get a better idea of how these populations are faring and what we can do to protect them. Now, of course, bird bringing is one way that you can get involved and get to grips with all that's going on in your local area. We at SpringWatch like our live cameras. So let's head south to Michaela to Norfolk to see what eyes she's got on which nests.
I've come into the Wildlife Hub, and this is where the dramas of our nests unfold, and our fabulous team of nest watchers keep their beady eyes on all these monitors so they can record anything that happens. Now today we've got Ian and Al on the controls, and I want to catch up with some of our nests. First of all, guys, can you cut to our swallows? The swallows in particular that were supposed to fledge last week on Thursday, but since then they've been out, they've been in, they've been out, they've been in. We all know those sort of teenagers, don't we? The ones that know where there's a comfy bed and a free meal. Well, these are those swallows. All 5 of them are back in the nest right now. They don't seem to like the wet weather, so we've seen them a lot over the weekend. But I think it's just time they all just went now because they're old enough to go and they should have fledged. What about our newer swallow nest? Can you cut to that one? Because we saw 4 of the chicks hatch on Thursday, and then the 5th one actually hatched on Friday morning. And look at that. The adults come in with some food. They've really grown well. They're only 3 days old, but they've already started to get those downy feathers. Anyone see what it came in with? Nope. Obviously flew in with something, but it's taken a fetal sac. So they're doing really well, so we keep our eye on those. You never know, they might fledge before the first lot. Now, let's have a look at one of my favourite nests. It's got to be the nest of the herons. Now, they're up at the top there, number 2. They've provided us with so much amusement. I say that, look at them now. They're just all standing there doing absolutely nothing. Now, they're 55 days old, just like the swallows. They should have gone by now. But if they do go, this is a heronry, so they're not the only nest there. And can we start panning, Ian? Can we start panning across? Because we've got a few nests that we are watching in the heronry, and as we pan across, we can see 2 other nests. There they are, one behind the other, 2 chicks in each. So, as I say, if the nests we were originally watching, if those chicks finally go, we can go to these ones because, as I say, they're such fabulous birds, and their table manners have been absolutely appalling. So keep your eyes on those. Now, there is a nest that I haven't really introduced you to yet, but I'm keen to today because I've got a feeling something might happen. And it's the nest of the shelduck, which is up at the top there, if we can cut to that. Now, it's a nest that we watched last year, and it's a hole in the ground under a tree. And we haven't really seen much action yet, but this is what we have seen. We've seen the shelduck come and go. If we can have a look at that we've seen the shelduck come and go a little bit. And we've watched it come out of that nest, we've watched it go back in, and it seemed to have a pretty regular pattern until today, when that pattern started to change. So that's why we're thinking something might be happening down there. It's so difficult to second guess. But as I say, if you remember, we did have cameras on that nest last year, and not only one nest was down there, we had the revelation that there were 2 nests, and we had 11 little ducklings come out, and then followed by, a couple of days later, 8 little ducklings, and it's absolutely delightful when you see it. What else should we show? Should we show the kestrels? Let's have a look at the kestrels. I love this nest. This is another one of my favourites because it's just so aesthetically pleasing. There are 3 chicks in that nest, and they've really been doing well over the weekend. Look at that one just peeking out. And over the weekend, we've seen them come out of there. We've seen them flap around a bit, trying to balance on that branch. Can we pull back a bit, and then we can actually see that branch coming out? And they've been balancing on there, which has been a little bit precarious over the weekend because it has been very wet, as we've been saying. They've been slipping and sliding, but doing really well. So I love it in here. I absolutely love it. I mean, you could spend so long. It's mesmerising just watching all of these nests. And, you know, some people have bought nest cameras themselves and put them in nest boxes at home and enjoyed exactly what we're doing. But some people have taken it to a completely different level. Kate McRae's one of them, and she's been watching nest cameras for 15 years. But this spring, she captured something incredibly special. It's absolutely gorgeous.
This time of year at UView is just stunning. It's a private garden that backs onto the River Severn. It's a wonderful privilege to be employed here to help them develop the area for wildlife and obviously to install all the cameras. We've got a network over the whole site. At any one time, between 20 and 30 cameras running from inside nest boxes, overseeing different perches, absolutely everywhere. The place is literally wired so that we can capture as much wildlife as we can. We're attracting species like otter, tawny owls. We've also got kingfishers visiting the pond, and you can hear the place is just full of birds. So it's an absolute delight at this time of year. Working at a site like this, with the amount of space I've got and the wildlife that's here, and with badgers on site, I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if I could build a badger set and put cameras in, just in the same way as I'd done with my little mammal boxes. So 7 years ago, I built my dream setup. Building a badger set is not an easy thing to do. We cleared a huge area. We built 2 chambers from sleepers. From those 2 chambers come 2 tubes which join in the middle so they can move easily from one chamber to the next. And then coming from each of those, 2 exits or entrances. Once everything was in, we wired the cameras up, covered everything over, then it was just a waiting game. So this is where you can see the badger set. So we've got the 2 internal cameras, we've got external cameras as well. Over the years, we had different species in there. We even had a fox who slept in there during the day. To me, anything we filmed was great, but when the first badger came in and just had a little sniff around, we were so excited. Over the following few years, the badger visits started to increase, and we weren't just getting one individual, we were getting several. And then this year, the most exciting thing happened. In the beginning of January, it was quite obvious there was a quite rounded female showing a lot of interest in the set. I thought, oh my goodness, it's January. I know that they give birth around the first few weeks in February, but in my heart, I didn't really dare hope that it was going to really happen. I could see she was bringing in a lot of bedding, and she was creating a space. It felt like she was nest building. She spent a lot of time in there moving the bedding around. Now, I'd watched this badger for a lot of time. I think what really made me feel that this was the time, she started licking herself a lot. She'd get up, she'd turn round, and then this footage was when I realised it was really happening for real. And I was saying, oh my goodness, she's gonna give birth. There's quite a lot of bedding here, so I couldn't see what was happening. I could see she was licking, I could see she was moving around, and then it was the sound. I could hear this tiny little squeal and squeaking. The most incredible noise. That completely blew me away. I wasn't anticipating that. At which point I knew we'd got badger cubs. When they weren't suckling, they were squeaking. So if she moved, if she got up, if she turned, if they moved away from her, they just constantly squealed and wriggled until they latched on again, at which point they would be quiet. But oh my goodness, I've never heard anything like it. We don't think anybody else has filmed a wild badger give birth. Now, That really blows my mind. I'm not a professional filmmaker, I'm a mega enthusiast. But the thought that I could have filmed a piece of footage like this before anybody else, it's very special to me.
You ready?
Oh!
Kate McRae, we salute you. What a triumph that is. We think that that's probably the first time that European badgers have ever been filmed giving birth to their young.
Oh, it melts your heart, doesn't it? Although that sound.
The sound.
Sounds incredible.
I know.
I mean, you just wouldn't know that they made that sound, would you?
Incredible stuff. And Peggy is the name of the badger that Kate is watching. She gave birth to those on the 14th of February, on Valentine's Day, and there were 3 of those cubs, tiny little things, 130 grams.
Exactly.
Do you happen to have a...
I just happen to have one in
Yeah.
my pocket that I
Well,
made earlier.
yeah,
Here's
go
one I
on
made
then.
earlier. No, I mean, that's how big they are. Tiny little things, aren't they?
12 centimetres long.
Yeah.
And they weigh the same as a tangerine.
Tangerine.
What is this?
No, it is.
What is this?
It's a work of art.
No,
That's what
isn't.
it is. It's
No,
a
it
work
isn't.
of art.
No, it isn't. Most of the props that we endeavour to show you on SpringWatch are brilliantly crafted by Lucy Lapwing. This is a monstrosity. This is one of those things that you play around with domestic cats with. I mean, Lucy, you've seriously got to do better.
You're so
Moving
rude.
swiftly on. Kate obviously was monitoring those cubs daily. What she found, that of the 3 days after they were born, 1 was taken out by the sow. She moved it from the chamber where she'd given birth to the second chamber that Kate had made. She didn't take it outside, she moved through that tunnel that she'd made, and she left it there. Now the question is why? Well, when animals are born in captivity, these are wild animals, Kate's of course, but when they're born in captivity, we very often see this, that the adults are able to select one of their young, which they instantly abandon. And later, post-mortem examination reveals that there's something congenitally wrong with that youngster. We don't know how they determine that's the case at all. It could be smell, but there's something there that they're able to identify. And of course, they don't want to continue to invest effort in something if it's not going to survive to be fit and healthy. So it's likely that that adult female deliberately removed that particular youngster because there was something wrong with it. She did in fact go back and feed it one more time, and then she went back 2 weeks later and she ate it to recover some of those nutrients.
I know, as you say, amazing that she must have known that something was wrong with it. It does mean that 2 were left, and Kate managed to capture all sorts of really interesting behaviour. And this is one bit she saw every time that the adult went out, and it wasn't very often, but it would do this. It would gather the nesting material, straw and leaves, and cover the cubs. Very diligently, she'd pull it all over, I say, gradually getting those cubs completely covered before she ventured out. She only ventured out for about 20 minutes and probably about every 24 hours. But why would she do that? Well, we asked Professor Dawn Scott, who's a mammal expert, and she said maybe it's to cover them up, to stop them being predated, maybe to dampen the
Listen,
scent.
far be it from me to pick a fight with Professor Emeritus Dawn Scott, great friend of the programme. I miss Dawn Scott, actually. It was great when Dawn used to come down. We'd always learn something new. But Dawn, they're making so much noise, and badgers have got such a keen sense of smell that if they went into that chamber, I don't think a bit of grass and some leaves is going to hide them.
Well, what can I say? She did give another possibility, which is
Right.
more likely, she
Go on.
said, which is that maybe it's a bit drafty down there. I mean, you'd presume that because it's underground and because there is a lot of nesting material around and because they keep each other warm, it would be warm enough. And she hasn't really seen that in other mammals that much.
Yeah, but hold on.
But
yeah. I know what you're going to say.
But it's not a natural one. It's been homemade, hasn't
It's
it?
a
So it
Kate
might be
McRae home
drafty.
job. And Kate McRae is a brilliant wildlife watcher and has done an amazing job here. But when it comes to badger architecture, perhaps she hasn't quite scored. And
needs
there is
the
a bit of a draft in there.
Insulation course, that's what she needs.
Maybe that's the case. Another interesting piece of behaviour that we've seen the badgers undertaking here is this. They're being weaned at the moment, so they're only drinking milk. And of course, they're going to be in that chamber for some time, so the adult doesn't want them making a lot of mess. On this account, She turns them around, gently holds them in her forepaws, and then licks their anus, stimulating them to urinate and defecate. And she consumes that. It's only milk, remember, that they've been having, so she's recovering some nutrients and that moisture. And this will ensure that that nesting chamber remains as clean as it can for as long as it can. I should say that as soon as they start eating solid foods, and that's going to be some time yet, then the adults will stop doing that. And we do see this in plenty of other mammals. Dogs do it, for instance, of course.
I'll tell you though, they're just so gorgeous to watch, and we are going to be catching up with them again tomorrow. But Yolo, have you ever seen that bum cleaning sort of behaviour?
Do you know, I've got to be honest, Michaela, I haven't. I've never seen that before, but don't worry, I've got something now, something cleaner for everyone, I think. Last week you saw that I introduced you to a white-tailed eagle nest on Cairngorms Partnership land in the Cairngorms National Park. And the RSPB had put a camera on that nest right at the beginning of the winter, so we were able to see a lot of the early goings on there. We saw nest refurbishment, we even saw mating. And of course, as we know in the bird world, mating invariably leads to egg laying. And the first egg was laid on the 4th of March. Here we are, we see the female. Very careful with that egg. The male in attendance nearby. This is true of the eagles when they're incubating. Often the partner will be in attendance somewhere nearby. Second egg was laid on the 8th of March. See those two eggs. You see how careful she is with her talons. Puncturing those eggs would be an absolute disaster. And that separation in time, 3 days, is quite normal. End of the month, 31st of March, there was a heavy snowfall. But luckily you can see there's no snow in the cup because the bird sat through all of that despite the cold weather, and note how quick the changeover is as well. The other bird is quick onto those eggs to make sure that they don't chill, and sits down, turns them, makes sure they're nice and warm, and pushes them under herself there. There we are, back into the snow. And our first egg hatched on the 8th of April. Brilliant news. We were all delighted. You can hear the peeping and the chattering there. This is communication both ways, and that communication begins even when the chick is in the egg. And it's important for the chick to recognize the parent's different calls, because a call telling the chick that an adult is coming in with food is very different to a call of an adult telling the chick there's danger, lie down flat in that nest. Let's go back to the nest, and just a couple of days later, you'll see that the egg still hadn't hatched on the 10th of April, but there was no panic. They're feeding the one chick, that's getting stronger. And then finally, on the 11th of April, at 8 a.m, we see that the second chick is hatching. It takes a long time to struggle for that chick to get out. Would have taken hours. It wasn't clean out and dry until late afternoon, and that was 3 days after the first egg hatched. This is called asynchronous hatching, and it's a way for birds of prey to ensure that in a time of a shortage of food, at least one chick will survive. And what you'll find is that the older chick will bully the younger chick if there isn't enough food. It's called the Cain and Abel struggle, and often the younger chick dies. But I'm really pleased to say that that didn't happen at this nest. Food wasn't an issue, and if we have a look at them just 2 weeks later, just look at the difference in that short time. They've grown so much, and watch the bigger chick. It puts its bottom off and fires up a projectile poo over the side of the nest. Why is it doing this? Well, bear in mind that they're in that nest for several weeks, for something like 70, 75 odd days, and you do not want to be lying in your own excrement. And of course that's going to cause disease, so they poo over the side of that nest. They're very clean birds. And I'm pleased to give you an update from just a couple of days ago. Look at the size of these chicks now. They actually look like proper young white-tailed eagles. The oldest chick there now is 59 days old. Look at the size of them. There's hardly enough room in that nest for those chicks. Massive bill, huge talons. So the eldest chick there's got what, maybe another 2.5 weeks left before it makes its maiden flight. And rest assured, we will bring you up to date with those birds again before the end of next week. Right, it's time to leave the white-tailed eagle nest, the busy nest, and go down to the other end of the country to Devon. It's time for our mindful moment. So I suggest that all of you take a seat, put your feet up, and enjoy a minute and a half of natural magic from the River Dart.
There's something blissful, isn't there, about sitting next to a river, the water just flows by, life flows by, just calm down.
Just takes all the stress
You never
off
normally see me doing this sort of thing. I'm making a special effort. We're running out of time, I'm afraid, but we just wanted to answer a question. One of our viewers sent us this photograph of an unusual-looking caterpillar. It's a looper caterpillar. The head is on the left-hand side, the rear part on the back. Quite tricky to identify. Our producer, Jake Senior's dad, so that's Senior, is a real moth expert. And we sent it to him, and he told us it was likely to be a feathered thorn. The thorn caterpillars are all pretty similar, but that's pretty good going from Senior.
I know, I love it when our whole team joins in, so keep sending the questions because we're about to have someone on the team that can answer them.
What a show we've had tonight. Badgers giving birth, burying beetles demonstrating parental care. Can we possibly follow it? Well, we're going to try tomorrow night, and we'll be back here taking a closer look at our raptor's nest, where throughout the breeding process they constantly update and restore them. The question is, why?
Do you remember that spider invading fungus from Winterwatch? Well, we've been in contact with the scientist and we've got a few answers.
I'll be going out with a young local naturalist in search of otters.
So that's all coming up at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Don't forget to keep watching our live cameras online. You can do that anytime from midday to sunset, whatever time that may be. Don't forget to go to all our social media platforms. 1 o'clock tomorrow, Hannah Stitful will be talking to Megs. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for tomorrow because I'm really hoping that the sun comes out and it gets a bit warmer. So hopefully we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Good night. To find out more about uncovering urban wildlife and about how regenerative farming affects our countryside, go to bbc.co.uk/SpringWatch and follow the links to the Open University.